If you're a dog owner or plan to become a dog owner and are moving to Portland, Oregon, this video is for you. There's an article that came out last week that ranked the top 50 cities for dog owners, and Portland was #1. And as a dog owner who's lived in Oregon my whole life, I'm going to talk to you about the article, how accurate it is, kind of some of the pros and cons of being a dog owner in Portland, Oregon, and just what it's like for dog owners in general living in Portland, Oregon. All that starts now. Hey everyone, Seth Marchant with Home Team Brokers here. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new to this channel, living in Oregon, and you'd like to know more about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and hit the subscribe button and tap that bell. That way you'll be notified every time we drop a new video. As licensed brokers in the state of Oregon, as much as we love making these videos, we'd also love to help you move here. So if you're somebody that's thinking about moving here, you can call, text, email, or click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom call with us. All right, let's talk about why Portland is such a great city for dog owners. All right, here's the article and reference from usnews.com, top 50 US cities to be a dog owner. I'm just going to scroll down here to the list at the very bottom. #1, Portland, Oregon. They're going to give you some reasons and some methodology of how they came up with this list. We'll go over that in just a moment. You can see some of the other cities that made the top of the list. These are larger cities, as you can probably see. And here's a map of all those cities. Not too much in the Midwest. Why is that? Well, it's probably a little bit because of the weather, and we'll get into that in this article. All right, so real quick for you. So National Pet Owners Survey reported 70% of U.S. households, some 90 million homes, own a pet. About 69 million of those own a dog. So there's a lot of dog owners out there, right? And I apologize for my voice. A little bit under the weather here as we head into the holiday season. A lot of sick kids. A lot of germs going around this time of the year. All right, so how did they come up with this data? Well, a lot of people that write these articles, typically they're getting this data from like a pet insurance company. Pet insurance providers are maybe a little bit a newer thing, but they're going to have a lot of data on animals and on pets, obviously. So that's a good place to aggregate your data from. So here are some of the factors that they're considering when creating their list of top 50 cities. So environment, number of dog parks per capita, walkability score. This is human walkability. If there is a way to somehow measure walkability for dogs, that might be a little bit different, you know. And when they say Portland, I assume that they are referring to like Portland proper. Portland metropolitan area is a tri-county area with 3 counties. They're probably just referring to Multnomah County, you know, which includes like downtown Portland. And quite frankly, Portland's a pretty walkable city, but you don't see people walking dogs in downtown Portland as much as you do kind of in some of the surrounding suburbs. So I don't know how relevant this is going to be if they had like a dog walkability score, like how walkable are you to a dog park? That would be a little bit more interesting, but nonetheless, they included this. And then you've got a number of days, 32 degrees or colder, number of days, 90 degrees or hotter. So hot and cold days. Another thing that would probably be relevant, especially for Portland, would be how many dry days do we have? How many days do we have where it doesn't rain? Now here in Portland, Oregon, one thing you'll notice, especially like I said, kind of out in the suburbs like Clackamas County and Washington County, rain or shine, Oregonians are typically out walking their dogs. So the wet days probably aren't going to impact everybody, but that would be interesting to look at as well, to compare the number of dry days and wet days for all these cities. Services, okay, vets, so concentration of vets. We do have a lot of vets here. Estimated cost of vet visits, 30-minute rates for dog walking services, and then hourly rates for pet sitting services. I don't know that there's a ton of dog walkers around here, or if that's a big thing in Portland. I don't see it too much. You know, occasionally you'll see somebody with 4 or 5 dogs with 4 or 5 different leashes, all different types of dogs that, you know, appears like they might be a dog walker. But the vast majority of people that I see out and about walking their dogs don't appear to be dog walkers. So this one might not be exactly the most relevant. One thing for services that would be interesting to include would be grooming services. That's probably something that people are using a little bit more than pet sitting or dog walking. We do have a lot of groomers here in Portland, Oregon. Mobile grooming is becoming more and more popular, so there are a handful of mobile groomers that will come to you around the Portland metropolitan area. And self-serve dog washes are also pretty common in the Portland metro area as well. Now, COVID killed those a little bit. They were becoming more and more popular right up into the beginning of COVID, and then dog washes were one of the things that were really kind of affected by COVID. So those kind of went away for a while, but are slowly starting to come back. Let's look at some of their key findings, and we'll revisit a few of these other things, and I'll kind of weigh in myself a little bit more on some of these other metrics that they're using to determine what are some of the better cities for dog owners. So here's something interesting. 10 different states are represented in the top 10 cities in our study. So in other words, the top 10 cities all had a different state. So that, I think kind of what they're saying there is that there isn't necessarily a dog-friendly state or a state that's more dog-friendly than another, like there are cities. In Oregon, if you go back and look down at these cities, Portland's second, third largest cities, they're under 200,000 people, 190, 170, 75, 180,000 people, something like that. All of these cities look like they have about 1 million people or more. So that might have been, they didn't say what they used as their qualifier for a city or what the population size is. I bet if you included two of Oregon's larger cities, such as Eugene and Salem, you might actually get one of those towns to break the top 10 and then have more than one state show up twice in the top 10. Eugene and Salem are not a whole lot different than Portland as far as being a dog owner goes. They're going to have about the same concentration of vets and same costs and all that stuff. So I think those ones probably just aren't in there because they're just not big enough. So out of the top 10 cities, Portland is rated in the top 5 for 3 factors. Access to dog parks. There are a ton of dog parks here. In fact, if you Google dog parks in Portland, you're probably only going to find a fraction of them. I just know this personally. I know there's a lot of dog parks that I personally go to when I Google search. They actually don't show up on Google. Now, usually the larger fenced dog parks will. There's going to be some dog parks that maybe have a little bit different rules that aren't fenced, that aren't maybe necessarily dedicated dog parks, but they're big open areas where dogs are allowed off leash. And those are kind of some of the things I see that don't show up on a Google search. So if you're doing a Google search, just know that the concentration, the density is probably going to be a little bit higher than just what you're eyeballing on Google. All right, number 4, in the least number of days with 90-degree temperatures or above. So yes, in Portland, we don't get a ton of hot days, although I will say in the last couple of years, we have had more hot days than average, but not a ton of days in the 90s. Occasionally we get 1 or 2 days in the hundreds. And I know this is really important. I have friends that live in places that are pretty hot, like Arizona, for example, and they've told me stories about walking their dogs where they have to go stop in the shadows, from place to place or time to time because it's so hot out. The pavement's so hot, the dog is so hot. So a lot of just jumping from shadow to shadow on some of those really hot days when you're out walking a dog in Phoenix. Not going to find that here in Portland, just doesn't get hot enough. And then number 2, tied at second with New York City and Detroit, amount of vets employed. Just anecdotally living in Portland, it does seem like there's a high concentration of vets. There's a lot of vets around, and there's a lot of good vets too. Our vet is really great. We've never had a reason to want to change to a different vet. All right, so here in terms of weaknesses, Portland ranked number 13 for walkability. Kind of like I mentioned above, I don't know how much the city not being the number 1 most walkable city is going to impact your day-to-day as a dog owner. Like I mentioned, if there was like some sort of walkability score for dog owners, like can you walk to the groomer? Can you walk to the vet? Can you walk to the dog park? That would be a lot more interesting. So I kind of take this one with a grain of salt. And then something else to keep in mind here, New York City's overall score impacted by high veterinary costs. I think that's going to be relevant across the board, right? Your vet cost, is going to be relevant to your cost of living. I'm sure vet costs in New York City going to be higher than somewhere like in a North Carolina or Alabama or just somewhere like down south where cost of living is a little bit less. Now, as far as the dog parks go, I have 2 dog parks from my house that are walking distance. These are kind of like I mentioned, these are not dedicated dog parks. These are big open spaces connected to other parks with things like playground, basketball courts, tennis courts, stuff like that. There will just be like a big field where dogs are allowed to run around off leash. Beyond that, the closest like dedicated dog park for me is maybe a 3 or 4 minute drive. That's going to be the case for a lot of towns in the suburbs, in the Portland metropolitan area, in Washington and in Clackamas County, a lot of dog parks are just going to be down the street. And you can see right here, Portland, San Francisco, Tampa, Portland, top 3 in this category. And you can expect that to continue. There are dog parks being constructed right now in the Portland metropolitan area. Portland being a really animal-friendly, dog-friendly place, you could probably expect more and more dog parks to pop up as time goes along. All right, back to that walkability. Most walkable cities, San Francisco, New York, Boston. Again, I take that with a grain of salt. I'm not sure exactly how relevant that's going to be to Portland, but the temperatures are going to be relevant. Aside from hot days, we have had more cold days recently, and that's true as I'm shooting this video. We're seeing some record colds right now, and in fact, I saw just yesterday, somebody posted that San Francisco, this was like one of the coldest days that they had seen in years in San Francisco, or maybe even decades. I think it was like 40 degrees or something like that. Not getting many days below 30 degrees in San Francisco, but we, like San Francisco and like much of the other country, are seeing some more cold days. We're going to see some days in the teens here in Portland, Oregon. Now, with that being said, if I had to choose between one of the two, dogs are probably going to choose the cold over the hot, especially if you have a dog that's like used to the cold, like a husky or something like that. A lot of dogs are going to be able to bear the cold a little bit better than they're going to be able to bear the heat. All right, and then the hot days at or above 90 degrees. It says Oakland, San Francisco tie for number 1, but then it says Phoenix and Mesa, Arizona have the most days at 90 degrees or above. Okay, not sure why it's really phrased like that, but to my point earlier, have friends that live in Phoenix. Walking their dog there can be very difficult on those hot days. You're gonna have to walk the dog early in the morning or late in the evening. Veterinarian employment, this kind of goes back to the density. New York City being the densest, followed again by Portland. All right, cost per veterinary visit. Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose have the costliest estimates, around almost $80 it looks like on average. Besides San Francisco, 3 of the top 10 cities were New York City, Honolulu, and Washington, D.C. Now, I will say, although they don't mention Portland here, Portland is probably going to be on the higher side. Again, just going back to cost of living, Portland probably ranks somewhere in the top 10, maybe top 15, and the state of Oregon in general for cost of living. So it's not cheap to live here. It depends on where you're coming from. Obviously, if you're coming from a New York City, a DC, or Honolulu, it's going to be cheaper. If you're coming from somewhere like a Midwest, it's going to be more expensive. All right, here's what dog walking rates look like. If you do want a dog walker, I would have to think the people that are paying dog walkers probably aren't super budget conscious. They're probably not looking at rates too much. And again, I don't see too many people that appear to be dog walkers, but if you are interested in those numbers, Memphis, Honolulu, Kansas, lowest dog walking rates. Now, another thing you can do as far as getting somebody to walk your dog or watch your dog, there's a website, rover.com, that I used. When we got married, we had nobody to watch our dog. We didn't just want to leave our dog somewhere that we weren't familiar with, and we wanted our dog to attend our wedding. So I went on rover.com and found somebody that was very highly rated, that was kind enough to take our dog for about 24 hours, including bringing our dog to the wedding so it could be part of the ceremony, and then keeping the dog overnight. So rover.com is a great source if you're looking for somebody to watch your dog or walk your dog, and maybe not just like a dedicated dog walker. All right, hourly pet sitting rates. So it says, well, the dog walking rates in Nashville, Davidson County are the highest. The city's pet sitting costs are the cheapest. Not sure why that is, but about $27 an hour for pet sitting. I think we paid our guy that we hired to watch our dog for 24 hours. And this was a while ago, but the person that we hired from rover.com to watch our dog for 24 hours, including traveling to our wedding venue, I think was like $120, something like that. It was about 5 or 6 years ago though, so I'm sure costs have gone up. I've definitely seen costs go up for grooming. Had a pretty big gap where we didn't have our dog groomed around the COVID time, probably like a lot of other people, because the service just wasn't available. I remember paying for $40 for our dog to be washed and nails trimmed pre-COVID. The exact same groomer now was $72 last time that I went. And that's not for a cut, that's just for a wash and a dry and nails. Now, a few other reasons why Portland is a great town that aren't mentioned in this article. A lot of restaurants here are dog friendly. Because so many people here own dogs, I'm sure a lot of restaurant owners own dogs as well, they really cater to the dog crowd. So you're going to be able to find a lot of places that you can eat and take your dog. Another great thing that we have here in Portland, Oregon is we have the Oregon coast nearby, and we have Mount Hood nearby. Most dogs like running on the beach, and a lot of dogs like playing in the snow as well too. So you have a lot of amenities that are close by, talking like an hour, hour and a half, or both, depending on where in Portland you live, to get to the mountain or to get to the coast. So I think that's really an added bonus if you are a dog owner living in Portland, Oregon. If this video helps you, give us a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos about what it's like to live in Oregon, make sure and subscribe to us. And if you're somebody that's thinking about taking the next steps, you can call us, text us, email us, or click the link below in the description if you want to schedule a Zoom with us. And if you want to weigh in, if you want to put something in the comments, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts about being a dog owner in Portland, Oregon, feel free to put those in the comments and we'll respond. Until next time, take care, everyone.